Another fascinating day observing the most puzzling species in the known galaxy. Humans. The name itself sounds like someone clearing their throat while trying to speak proper galactic standard. These peculiar beings continue to both amuse and confuse our entire research team. Subject 47 has increased its fluid intake by 12% today, my assistant, Zara Nix, reports with her typical excessive enthusiasm. I swear her antenna wiggle every time she talks about the humans, like a hatchling discovering their first bioluminescent crystal. Fascinating, I drawl, not bothering to hide my sarcasm. They require so much maintenance just to survive. Has anyone checked the atmospheric moisture levels? We wouldn't want their outer membranes to dry out again. The memory of last week's minor humidity fluctuation still makes me chuckle. 3 of our human subjects complained of something called dry skin and requested additional moisturizing compounds. Such fragile creatures, even our youngest spawn, have more resilient outer casings. From my observation pod, I watch as the humans move about their designated living quarters. The reinforced transparent barriers necessary for their protection, of course, give us a perfect view of their daily routines. The Central Science Council insisted on these safety measures, though I sometimes wonder if they're more for our peace of mind than actual necessity. Senior researcher Voss, the voice of our newest team member, Ren Thal, breaks through my contemplation. You must see this. Subject 51 is engaging in their peculiar muscle enhancement ritual again. I hover over to his station, my locomotion field humming with mild annoyance. Ah yes, exercise they call it. One of the humans, a particularly persistent male specimen, is repeatedly lifting and lowering metal objects in what appears to be a deliberate strain on their musculature. How primitive, I note, recording the observation. Their bodies require constant physical stress to maintain basic functionality. It's remarkable they ever achieved spaceflight with such high-maintenance physiological needs. The research facility's artificial sun begins its scheduled dimming cycle, signaling the approach of the rest period. Right on cue, several of our subjects prepare for their required unconsciousness phase sleep in their terminology. Such an inefficient design feature, spending nearly a third of their life cycle in a vulnerable, inactive state. Prepare the evening nutrient dispersal. I instruct the facility's automated systems and ensure the temperature remains within their narrow tolerance range. We wouldn't want another incident like the great thermostat crisis of last month. That particular event still sends ripples of amusement through the research team. Who knew a 2-degree temperature increase could generate such vocal protests? The humans had demanded immediate adjustment, claiming discomfort. As if their sensory systems were so refined they could detect such minimal environmental changes. My third eye catches movement in Habitat Section C. 2 humans are engaging in their bizarre social bonding ritual of conversation, complete with facial muscle contractions they call smiles. How they manage to communicate effectively with such limited telepathic capability remains one of the great mysteries we hope to unravel. Log notation. I speak into my personal recorder. Day 247 of human observation continues to reinforce initial assessments. Species displays remarkable survival despite numerous evolutionary disadvantages: single-layered dermal protection, limited sensory capacity, extreme environmental sensitivity, and inefficient waste processing systems. Further study required to understand how they achieve technological advancement with such significant biological limitations. As I prepare to end my observation shift, I can't help but feel a mix of pity and puzzlement for these creatures. The galaxy is harsh and unforgiving, yet somehow these fragile beings have carved out their own place in it. Perhaps there's something we're missing, some hidden quality our sophisticated sensors haven't detected. But that's a mystery for another cycle. Right now, I need to ensure the night shift researchers remember to maintain the humans' precious humidity levels. We wouldn't want their delicate systems to experience any distress during their unconsciousness phase, would we? Subject 73, self-identified as Marcus Kane, continues to defy our standard classification protocols. When he arrived at our facility 3 lunar cycles ago, we expected another typical specimen. How gloriously wrong we were. Senior researcher, he's doing it again. Zara Nix's voice carries that mixture of horror and fascination that seems reserved solely for this particular human. He's consuming the spiced nutrient packets, the ones marked as level 3 intensity. I rush to the observation window, all 3 of my eyes widening at the sight. Kane sits there, casually ingesting what our xenobiologists classified as a mild toxin, something the humans call ghost peppers. His face displays the standard signs of physical distress: increased skin temperature, elevated perspiration, yet he continues eating, even appearing to derive pleasure from the experience. Remarkable, I mutter, making rapid notes. The others of his species typically avoid these compounds. Perhaps this one's pain receptors are malfunctioning. But that's not even the most perplexing thing about Kane. Yesterday, during the standard endurance trials, he exceeded the expected human limitations by such a margin that we had to recalibrate our measurement devices. We were certain they were malfunctioning. Pull up the footage from stress test 47B. I command the system. The holographic display shows Kane running on our adaptive terrain simulator. When most humans would have requested a rest period, he simply kept going. For 4 standard hours. Their cardiovascular systems shouldn't be capable of sustaining such prolonged exertion, research assistant Renthal comments, his secondary appendages twitching with excitement. Yet his vital signs remain stable throughout. It contradicts everything in our existing human physiology database. The most unsettling aspect of Subject 73 isn't his physical capabilities, it's his behavior during our interaction sessions. While other humans display expected anxiety responses to our appearance, Kane exhibits genuine curiosity. He asks questions. Many questions. Senior researcher Voss Kane's voice booms through the communication system. I noticed your species' bioluminescent patterns shift when you're processing new information. Is that an involuntary response or a form of nonverbal communication? I feel my own bioluminescence flicker in response involuntarily, I might add. How does he notice these things? Our previous subjects barely registered the basic differences between our primary and secondary appendages. Subject Kane, I respond, trying to maintain professional distance. Please focus on completing your assigned tasks. He grins that peculiar baring of teeth that somehow isn't a threat display and returns to his physical conditioning routine. But not before adding, your patterns just shifted to that lovely shade of purple again. Fascinating. My research team exchanges uncertain glances. We're supposed to be studying him, not the other way around. Later that cycle, during the evening nutrient distribution, Kane approaches the barrier again. Hey, Dr. Voss, I've been wondering about something. Your atmospheric processors, they're using crystalline filtration matrices, right? Have you considered implementing a bioengineered alternative? The efficiency rates could be significantly higher. I pause, my feeding tentacle halfway to my mouth. The suggestion is not entirely without merit. But that's not the point. How does this supposedly primitive being even understand our atmospheric processing systems? Log addendum. I speak into my recorder after Kane finally returns to his rest pod. Subject 73 continues to display behavioral patterns that deviate significantly from established human norms. Recommend additional monitoring and possible consultation with the Central Science Council. There's something about this one. Something we're missing. As I prepare to end my shift, I notice Kane watching me from his pod, that enigmatic smile still on his face. He waves another human gesture we haven't quite decoded, and I find myself unconsciously waving back with my tertiary appendage. Perhaps we need to reconsider some of our basic assumptions about human capabilities. But that's a dangerous line of thinking, isn't it? The following is a real-time account of the incident currently unfolding in Research Section 7. May the cosmic architects preserve us all. It started as a routine observation cycle. The facility was operating at standard efficiency. All subjects were engaged in their scheduled activities, and my biggest concern was completing the quarterly report for the Central Science Council. Then my spawn, Nexus, arrived for their first educational tour. Parent creator Voss Nexus burbled, their bioluminescent patterns glowing with excitement. The human specimens are so peculiar. Why do they move so awkwardly on just 2 appendages? I was in the middle of explaining bipedal locomotion when the first alarm sounded. A piercing wail that made our sensory membranes vibrate. Warning lights bathed the facility in crimson pulses. Something had gone catastrophically wrong in the plasma containment section. Report, I demanded, all 3 eyes fixed on the emergency display. Zara Nix's voice crackled through the communication system, higher pitched than usual with panic. The experimental plasma drive in Lab 12 is experiencing a cascading failure. Containment fields are degrading at an exponential rate. The humans in their habitats noticed the commotion. Subject 73 Kane pressed against the observation barrier, his expression showing what we'd learned to recognize as concern. The other subjects retreated to their designated safety areas, following our carefully crafted protocols. Initiate emergency containment procedures, I ordered, trying to maintain calm. Begin facility-wide evacuation sequence. That's when everything went from bad to catastrophic. A secondary explosion rocked the research wing. The impact knocked me off my gravity stabilizers, sending me tumbling through the air. Warning klaxons screamed from every direction. Through the chaos, I heard the most terrifying sound imaginable: Nexus's distress call. My spawn had been thrown into the restricted access corridor, the one connecting the plasma research lab to the human observation area. The security barriers activated automatically, sealing off sections of the facility. Nexus was trapped. Parent creator, their bioluminescence, flickered weakly. The temperature, it's rising beyond my tolerance threshold. The situation's full horror hit me like a gravitational wave. The failing plasma drive was superheating the corridor. Emergency systems were offline. The heat would be lethal to our species in minutes. The security barriers, designed to protect the facility during catastrophic events, now prevented any rescue attempt. Renthal's voice cut through my panic. Senior researcher, the corridor temperature has exceeded 1,000 degrees Celsius. The structural integrity of the human containment barriers is compromising. Through my haze of fear, I noticed something strange. The humans were gathered at their barrier, pointing and making their verbal communication sounds with increased urgency. Kane stood at the front, pressing his primitive appendages against the transparent surface. The barrier between the human habitat and the corridor is failing, Zara reported, her antennae curled in distress. Heat damage is causing molecular breakdown in the containment field. I watched in horror as the barrier began to shimmer, its molecular bonds weakening under the extreme temperature. This was a disaster beyond measure. Not only was my spawn trapped, but now our human subjects would be exposed to lethal conditions. Their fragile forms wouldn't survive even brief contact with such extreme heat. Nexus, I called out helplessly, pressing against the security barrier separating us from the corridor. Conserve your energy. Emergency protocols will. I couldn't finish the sentence. The emergency protocols were useless. The rescue teams would never reach this section in time. The heat would claim my spawn long before help arrived. Through the observation window, I noticed strange activity in the human habitat. Kane was removing his outer protective layers, stripping down to his minimal coverings. Other humans were pouring their precious water supplies over him. What are they doing? Renthal asked, bewildered. Their behavior patterns don't match any emergency response protocols. Before anyone could respond, the human containment barrier failed completely. A wave of superheated air rushed into their habitat. This was it. We were about to witness the loss of multiple research subjects. But Kane didn't retreat from the breach. Instead, he did something so unexpected, so incomprehensible, that for a moment I thought my sensory organs were malfunctioning. He stepped forward. Into the corridor. Into the fire. By the cosmic architects, Zara whispered, her bioluminescence dimming in shock. He's going after Nexus. Emergency log continuation required. The corridor blazed like the surface of a dying star. Through waves of distorted air, I watched Subject Kane know, Marcus do the impossible. The human moved with purpose, his water-soaked body steaming in the inferno. His core temperature is rising beyond survivable parameters, Zara Nix screamed, her monitoring equipment flashing urgent warnings. Cellular breakdown should begin in approximately 20 seconds. But Marcus kept moving. The human skin reddened, blisters forming and popping in real time. His respiratory rate increased dramatically as he fought through the superheated air. Our sensors recorded everything, though none of us could quite believe the readings. Parent creator Nexus's cry grew weaker, their bioluminescence barely visible through the heat haze. My outer membrane is beginning to crystallize. I pressed helplessly against the security barrier, watching Marcus navigate the death trap my spawn was trapped in. The human's movements were deliberate, calculated. He wasn't rushing blindly, he was conserving energy, using the corridor's support structures as minimal cover from the worst of the heat. Look at his thermal readings, Renthal observed, his scientific curiosity somehow intact despite the crisis. He's maintaining cellular cohesion through some sort of biological process we've never documented. The water evaporating from his skin is creating a temporary protective barrier. Marcus reached the halfway point of the corridor. His exposed skin was angry red, sheets of sweat instantly vaporizing. Yet his vital signs, while severely elevated, hadn't crashed. The human body, which we'd always considered embarrassingly fragile, was adapting to conditions that would have killed most known species instantly. The plasma containment is at 12%, and falling Security Chief Thara Zen's voice crackled through the emergency channel. That entire section will be engulfed in plasma discharge in approximately 3 minutes. Marcus reached Nexus. My spawn lay curled in a defensive ball, their outer membrane already showing signs of fatal crystallization. The human knelt, his hands those primitive manipulator appendages we'd so often mocked, gently examining my child. He's checking Nexus's vital signs, I realized aloud. How does he even know where to look for them? Then Marcus did something that defied every prediction our xenobiologists had ever made about human physical capabilities. He removed his outer clothing layer, the last barrier between his skin and the inferno, and wrapped it around Nexus. This is unprecedented, Zara breathed. He's sacrificing his own protection to shield a member of another species. Marcus lifted Nexus. The effort must have been tremendous. My spawn's crystallizing membrane would have been searing hot to touch. The human's hands blistered on contact, the damage visible even through our heat-distorted sensors. Yet he didn't drop them. Didn't hesitate. His pain receptors should be overwhelming his nervous system, Renfall muttered. The agony alone should render him unconscious. But Marcus Kane stood. With my spawn cradled against his chest, protected by his last piece of clothing, he turned back toward the exit. His exposed skin was now a landscape of blisters and burns. Blood vessels had burst beneath the surface, creating patterns of red and purple. His hair was singed, his eyebrows gone. The human took one step, then another. Each movement must have been excruciating. 1 minute until total plasma containment failure, the automated system announced cheerfully. Marcus's pace increased. He wasn't running would have wasted precious energy and oxygen, but each step was purposeful, powerful. The sensors tracked his vital signs, which should have been impossible given the conditions. Heart rate 192 beats per minute, Zara read out. Blood pressure critical. Core temperature approaching 104 degrees Fahrenheit. He's cooking from the inside out. 40 seconds to containment failure. Marcus reached the 3/4 point of the corridor. His legs trembled with effort, but he didn't slow down. Didn't stumble. The precious bundle of my spawn remained steady in his arms. 30 seconds. The emergency bulkheads began closing in automatic response to imminent containment failure. Marcus saw them descending. The look on his face, I finally understood why humans called certain expressions steel. 20 seconds. He broke into a run. Not the careful, measured pace of before, but a full sprint. Every step had to be agony. His skin was cracking, blood vessels rupturing. But he ran. 10 seconds. The bulkhead was half closed. Even a peak condition member of our species couldn't have made it in time. We weren't built for such explosive movement. But humans, as we were learning, were built differently. 5 seconds. Marcus dove. An awkward, desperate movement, twisting in midair to protect Nexus from impact. He slid under the descending bulkhead with less than an inch to spare. The barrier slammed shut behind him just as the plasma containment failed completely. The corridor he'd just traversed became a river of starfire. For a moment, nobody moved. Marcus lay on the cool floor, still curled protectively around my spawn. His body shuddered with pain and effort, but his arms remained locked around Nexus until we reached them. Parent Creator Nexus's voice was weak, but clear as I finally held them. Their membrane was damaged but would heal. They would live. Marcus Kane looked up at me from the floor, his devastated body somehow managing one of those tooth-bearing expressions, a smile. "Your kid," he gasped, each word clearly causing pain, "has your eyes, all 3 of them." Then he lost consciousness. As the medical team rushed in, I noticed something extraordinary. The other humans, watching from their habitat, weren't showing signs of surprise. Concern, yes, worry for their fellow humans' condition, but not surprise. They'd known. They'd all known he was capable of this, which made me wonder what else were these fragile beings capable of. Log addendum, I spoke quietly, watching the medical team work on Marcus's severely burned body. Request immediate revision of all standard data regarding human physical limitations, environmental tolerances, and behavioral parameters. Current assumptions are clearly inadequate. The last thing I saw before following the medical team was Ren Thal, already updating the research archives. The entry header read, Human Emergency Response Capabilities Theoretical Limits require complete RE-evaluation. 3 solar cycles have passed since the plasma containment incident. Subject 73 Marcus Kane lies in our medical bay, his body wrapped in regenerative field generators. Our entire understanding of human physiology is being rewritten with each passing moment. These readings can't be correct, Dr. Mira Vex, our chief medical officer, mutters while studying the tissue regeneration data. His cellular repair rate exceeds our models by 300%. The burn damage is healing. We gather around the medical bay's observation window, watching in fascination. The human's severely burned skin is gradually repairing itself, not just scarring over, actually regenerating, without genetic modification or technological assistance, naturally. Tell me again about their evolutionary history, Zara Nix demands, her antennae twitching with excitement. About their planet's fire usage. Renthal brings up the historical data. They mastered fire approximately 300,000 of their years ago, not just using it, controlling it, living with it. Their entire civilization is built on their ability to exist alongside plasma reactions we considered universally lethal. But the temperatures in that corridor, Zara protests. No evolutionary adaptation could. That's just it, I interrupt, the realization finally crystallizing in my mind. We've been looking at their adaptations all wrong. Their strength isn't in their ability to resist extreme conditions, it's in their ability to survive them. The medical bay's monitors tell an extraordinary story. Marcus's body isn't fighting the damage, it's rebuilding from it, stronger, more resilient. The very thing that should have killed him has triggered healing mechanisms we never knew existed. Nexus visits daily, their membrane almost fully recovered. They hover near Marcus's bed, their bioluminescence pulsing with curious patterns. Parent creator, they ask during one visit, why did the human risk termination to save me? The question echoes through our research team. We've spent cycles studying human biology, but we've missed something far more fundamental about their nature. Chief Medical Officer's report, Dr. Vex speaks into her recorder. Human cellular regeneration demonstrates previously unknown properties. Subjects' burns are healing at unprecedented rates. More significantly, the healed tissue shows increased resistance to thermal damage. They don't just survive, they adapt. The other human subjects have been oddly calm about the whole situation. When we expressed amazement at Kane's survival, they seemed almost amused. You really don't get it, do you? Subject 82 said during a routine check. Humans have been walking through fire for each other since we first stood upright. It's not about being tough enough to survive it. It's about deciding that someone else's survival matters more than our own pain. The implications are staggering. We've been studying their physical limitations, their biological constraints, their seemingly fragile forms. But we've been measuring the wrong things entirely. Update the central database. I command our research AI. Human survival capabilities cannot be measured solely through biological metrics. Their psychological factors, what they call determination and willpower, directly influence their physical tolerances. Zara's research notes capture it perfectly. Human adaptability extends beyond mere physical endurance. Their minds can override their body's limitations when sufficient motivation exists. This suggests their true survival threshold is not determined by biological constraints, but by the strength of their will to endure. In the medical bay, Marcus stirs. His first words upon regaining consciousness weren't about his condition or his pain. The kid, he rasped. Nexus, are they okay? Dr. Vex assured him of Nexus's recovery, then asked the question we'd all been wondering: how did you know you could survive those conditions? Marcus's response changed everything we thought we knew about humans. I didn't, he said simply. I just knew I couldn't live with myself if I didn't try. The Central Science Council is still processing our revised reports on human capabilities. The old models, based purely on physical measurements and biological tolerances, have been discarded. We're developing new protocols that account for what we now call the human uncertainty principle. The observable phenomenon where human beings regularly exceed their theoretical limitations when sufficiently motivated. Log addendum. I speak softly, watching Nexus demonstrate their recovered mobility to a healing Marcus. Perhaps we were asking the wrong question all along. The mystery isn't how humans survive to reach the stars. The mystery is what they'll achieve now that they're here. The burns will leave scars, even with our advanced medical technology. But when we apologized for this, Marcus laughed. Scars tell stories, he said. And this is a pretty good story, don't you think? Indeed it is, Marcus Kane. Indeed it is. The Central Science Council has officially redesignated humans from Class 3 protected species to Class 1 partner species following our revised findings. As I record this final log entry, I can see the changes already taking place throughout our facility. The reinforced barriers. Gone. The environmental safeguards? Simplified. The endless safety protocols? Significantly revised. Not because humans don't need protection, but because we finally understand they're capable of protecting themselves and others. The human integration protocols have been approved, Zara Nix announces, practically glowing with excitement. Marcus Kane has been appointed as our first Human Advisory Council member. Through the new open layout research area, I watch Marcus working alongside our scientists. His burns have healed into a pattern of scars that our younger researchers find fascinating. He takes their questions with remarkable patience, especially when explaining for the 100th time that no, humans cannot actually breathe fire or survive in plasma. We're establishing joint research teams on 3 more stations. Renthal reports, reviewing the latest directives. The humans are particularly interested in helping us improve our emergency response protocols. I have to suppress a surge of amusement at that. Of course they are. It's exactly what we should have expected from a species that runs toward danger rather than away from it. Nexus has recovered completely, though they now show a marked preference for human company during their educational cycles. They've started a research project of their own, documenting what they call everyday human heroics. The small acts of courage and kindness that we once dismissed as behavioral anomalies. Parent creator, they asked me recently, do you think humans know how extraordinary they are? The question lingered with me. In all our studies, all our observations, all our careful measurements of human capabilities, we never thought to measure their capacity for self-sacrifice. We documented their physical limitations, but missed their limitless willingness to exceed them for others. The incident has sparked a revolution in xenobiological research. Our focus has shifted from studying species limitations to understanding their potential. The human uncertainty principle is now required reading for all new researchers, along with the cautionary note, never assume you know what a human cannot do. Marcus Kane's actions did more than save my spawn. They shattered our preconceptions about human fragility and forced us to confront our own limitations, not physical ones, but limitations of understanding and imagination. As I prepared to submit my final report to the council, I find myself returning to something Marcus said during his recovery. Strength isn't about not breaking. It's about what you're willing to break for. Perhaps that's the true revelation. We saw humans as fragile because they could break. They saw breaking as an acceptable price for protecting others. In the end, their perceived weakness was their greatest strength. Final log notation: the humans have a saying, to err is human. We thought this highlighted their imperfection. Now we understand it illuminates their greatest gift, the ability to be flawed, vulnerable, breakable, and yet achieve the impossible through sheer force of will. Future research teams, take note when studying humans. Prepare to be proven wrong, repeatedly, magnificently, and consider it a privilege when you are. This is senior researcher Kylax Voss, concluding the human resilience study, though perhaps concluding is the wrong word. With humans, I suspect the real discoveries are just beginning.